It was really the advent of rock and roll that pushed Broadway musical out of the mainstream of American culture, because up until then, Broadway music had been the top 40, the top 10 hit parade music of the country, and that started to change. And by the late 1960s, it was a done deal.
Hello, Dolly. This is Nurse Dolly.
In May 1964, Louis Armstrong's rendition of Hello, Dolly spent a week at the top of the charts, breaking the Beatles' run of 3 straight months.
You keep blowing, still growing, you still going strong.
It was one of the last times in the 20th century that Broadway had a #1 hit song.
Well, the culture is definitely shifting, but Broadway was basically trying to ignore the 60s. The typical musical at the height of the Vietnam War could be something like How Now, Dow Jones, you know, or George M. Shows that are promises that have absolutely nothing to do with the main culture of the moment. It was really the consummation of Broadway musical falling out of sync with pop culture.
I think that the thing that you have to take on board is the profound disruption of Vietnam.
This is the dawning of the age.
And the awareness of the American public that they were in this terrible war that they couldn't get out of, that they really was not winnable, and it was on some level probably unjust. In song and theater, there was a great deal of protest against the war. And it divided the culture.
By 1967, the war in Vietnam and the protests against it were polarizing the country. 2 young actors, Jerome Ragney and James Rado, seized upon that friction as the storyline for a new musical production. For backing, they sought out Joseph Papp, a maverick producer who had just created the Public Theater, a non-commercial venue downtown. Known for presenting Shakespeare in Central Park, Papp was also a champion of contemporary theater.
Vietnam was a major plot point in the show, but the war wasn't really the main thing. The main thing was the lifestyle. It seemed to be more about hippies. You know, growing their hair long and living in wearing different kind of clothes.
Gimme a head with hair, long, beautiful hair, shining, gleaming, steaming, flaxen, waxen.
The show was called Hair. It was the first Broadway musical with an entire score of rock music.
I'd never seen a Broadway musical when I wrote Hair. I like funky music. So that was and then when they said, well, we want a rock and roll score, I said, well, to me, that's what I do.
Hair was the first show that allowed the generation gap that had appeared at this point in time when civil protest, rock and roll, and dope, all of it arrived at the same time. Somehow at this show, parents went because they wanted to understand their kids. Kids went because they wanted to show their parents what it was. It filled that gap very, very well.
Every singer, dancer, hippie, panther, you name it, we were all online waiting to audition for this show. And we went into a series of rehearsals like I'd never seen before, unlike any other theatrical show I think I've worked on. We did a lot of exercises dealing with caring for one another, loving one another, in order to be loving to the audience.
We starve, look at one another, short of breath, walking proudly in our winter coats.
With its downtown run completed, the show moved first to a disco club called the Cheetah. And then, with new director Tom O'Horgan at the helm, Hare moved to the Biltmore Theatre. Drug use, obscene language, a cast intermingling with the audience, and frontal nudity were all central to Broadway's newest hit.
I think it affected a lot of people. People still come up to me, and say that it changed their life. But I don't know if it changed Broadway very much. We had our little day in the sun, and then we retired.
Hair ran on Broadway for 4 sold-out years. Along with its enduring hit songs, the show helped to establish the world of off-Broadway and Joe Papp's Public Theatre as important new players in the development of the commercial musical.